Okay, welcome back. We're here with more Novel Bootcamp, week 9. Just a couple of these classes left before we wrap up for the year, with the idea being that the milestones, if you're following them, will take you all the way to the end of the draft. Let me fix my webcam there. By the end of the year. So all these bootcamp sessions are wrapping up. There we go. The yellow on the green screen sometimes messes with the chroma key a little bit. There we go. Okay. So all of the bootcamp sessions currently running are going to wrap up by the end of the year. That's feature, novel, and also TV. So the current topics are action horror for features. That's running Sundays, 11 to 1. Post-apocalyptic dystopian for TV. And that is Friday, 6 to 8. And then today, this time slot, Saturday, 12 to 2, is novels. And that does not have a genre focus this time. Those are all the dates that they're wrapping up. So you can try to plan to finish by then. At this point, if you're following these milestones, you'll be writing about 5,000 to 10,000 words a week. Let me get out of the way here. Trying to wrap up by December 6th, or just really the end of December. Anytime around that end date is fine. If you take a little longer and you need to finish in the new year, then that's all good. Welcome, Nacho.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
So we got a bit of a cough. It seems I'm developing one. So today we'll do check-in and share what you've been reading. We'll look at mood and vibes, and I have a brand new describe the vibe exercise, which should be fun. We will look at tone and some different examples of types of tones and the way that those stories work. Genres, subgenres, markets, we'll touch on those. We won't spend too long on it because we covered that stuff in week 1. We'll go a little more into expectations, tropes, and cliches, and then a genre mashup exercise towards the end, wrapping up with workshop and lab period for whatever questions you have based on what you're working on. I'm also seeing a note in the chat from Dakota who says, I'll be busy taking pictures for people, so he's making progress but will not be in today's class. Thank you for joining. You can hopefully catch up on the videos. He's almost at 16K. That's great, with the plan to be at 30K by the end of the year, then finished in spring. Okay, awesome. Sounds good. Keep it up. And that's the mystery novel you're working on, if I remember correctly. So let's start with check-in. Sorry, the date on that one as well. Forget the date, but in any case, how's your writing going this week? Any progress or updates that you want to share that you haven't shared already? And what have you been reading? Anything you've liked or noticed or learned from stuff you've been reading lately? I'd love to hear about. Okay, we'll start with Becky. You maybe gave us a short update at the start of the class, but anything else you want to share about where you are in your project or how your writing was going this week?
Yeah, so obviously I'm working on the other book, the horror, because I'm still waiting for my mentor to get back to me with the other book. Yeah, doing okay. I haven't really had much time to sit. I've sort of taken a bit of a break from computer activities, so I've been doing more just kind of notes in a notebook. So I haven't actually had time to sit and type words. I've just sort of been letting the world kind of come deeper in my mind, which is helpful for me. Sometimes time away from the computer really helps me to. I daydream a lot about the story, so that then helps me get to grips with the book. And I'm reading the sequel to the book that I said last time. So the book I said about last time was Mallory Vale and the Curse of Maggoty Skull, which was middle grade horror about necromancers, is similar to mine. The sequel's just come out, so I've been reading that one. And this one actually features Death himself, so it's quite interesting.
Great. I love a personified death or Satan or any of these kind of like mythical figures that have been interpreted in so many different ways by every single culture in the world.
The other good thing about this is that I'm realizing, I mean, the writing style is aimed younger than I'm writing, and it's when I say I don't know what the term is, because it's not gory as in like, you know, death and blood and all of that. It's but it's like, I mean, one of the main characters is literally called Maggoty Skull. He's a skull of a person who was killed and then cursed to have his to be alive in his skull for eternity. You know, and he's an actual skull. Like she's literally carrying around an actual human skull with her. And it's got, you know, he talks about the reason he calls himself Maggoty Skull is because he remembers all the maggots eating his body, and so it's kind of gross, you know, but it's still appropriate for kids.
Yeah,
So it's
yucky,
sort of,
spooky, icky. Maybe those are the vibes rather than
yeah,
gory.
yeah, it's not gory, but it's definitely icky, and it's making me realize, you know, I can get away with this.
Yeah,
You know, it's
I used to read that kind of stuff as a kid all the time.
yeah, yeah, it's brilliant. So it's shown me I can do more than, you know, I don't need to be afraid. Ick is good.
Sure, sure. Thank you for the update. Let's hear from Joyce.
I actually had a good week. I wrote about 5,200 words. I finally moved on from the chapters that I kept cleaning, so that was like a big milestone for me. Um, and then the book I'm still reading The Room Next Door. One of the things I like about it is I think she's really good about sensory details, which I'm kind of weak on. But one thing that I noticed that's kind of making me aware of my own writing is there's a lot of characters, and there's an adult version of someone, and then their younger version when they're remembering, like a past crime.
Mhm.
And I feel like it takes me a minute to realize, am I with the adult now? Am I with the child, the earlier version of her? And so it's just making me conscious of my transitions and how when I do switch back and forth, just to make sure somebody's kind of grounded in, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's a great point. It's a lot easier to assess that when you're watching TV or a movie. Like when you watch a show like Yellow Jackets. Have you watched Yellow Jackets on Showtime?
No.
Oh yeah. Well, that's okay. It's a horror thriller type of mystery show about the same group of people before and after a plane crash. But you don't have to wonder about which version of the character we're with. You can just clearly see which version of them, and like you can just visually assess that so much faster in a script or in a movie script than you can in a book. But that's why it's sometimes helpful to just really explicitly label your chapters, or just like give it like put a year just like at the top of the page. Just make sure that you can't really miss it, or else yeah, you run the risk of running into the issue that you're mentioning here.
Good ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Nacho, do you have an update for us?
Yeah, just been working on the short story uh that was supposed to be for a submission to like a anthology, but I didn't make the deadline, but I still want to just finish this thing.
Okay.
And also started reading Tom's Crossing. It's a new Mark C. Danielewski book. Uh it's interesting. I mean, the opening is so far, it's sort of like a kind of Cormac McCarthy kind of style of, you know, Western dialect, I guess. The narrator. So yeah, it's interesting.
It's certainly going to get weirder, I would imagine, if it's
Yeah.
Danielewski book. Yeah. All right. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Did I miss anyone? That's everyone. Man. Everyone of this group of this this like several small group. Okay. Well, we hope that more folks join us. If you're watching other videos, the classes are better live and interactive. So we hope that you can make it. All right. Let's start with mood and tone and vibe and things like this. All right. So to begin with, I kind of just picked a picture for this because, sometimes you just need an image for a slide. But there's a certain mood here. There's a certain vibe. What mood do you feel from this image? What does this make you guys think of?
Autumn cutesy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
little doggies and sweaters.
And if you were to turn this into a movie, I don't know, I think maybe a bit of a comedy side to it as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something innocent about
The
it, right?
Yorkies have to run a Starbucks and learn how to make pumpkin spice lattes.
I love it. That would be on Hallmark Channel for sure. So the mood is kind of like the emotional atmosphere that the reader feels. This very indefinable term called vibe is sometimes used to the point where there's TikToks and Instagrams and subreddits that are called like recommend me books based on this vibe. and it'll just be a picture of like a lady in a fancy dress on a balcony holding a glass of wine and staring out over a vineyard. And it's like, okay, you get usually really good recommendations based on that. Like, people know what you mean. We're very good at, excuse me, we're very good at assessing vibes. And doing so visually is to some extent a little easier on first glance than it is with text. So that's why we're going to go from image to vibe in just a minute in one of the upcoming slides. But ultimately, this is, I think, created through some combination of the sensory details, the imagery that you're using, the word choice, the pacing, the atmosphere, all these things working together are going to sum up to create this sort of mood. Let's look at some slides and we're going to ask, what do they make you think of? What moods, emotions, memories, or details, and what stories do they make you think of and why? We'll come back to this brushstroke slide in just a second. Let's start with describe the vibe. What does this make you guys think of?
It's kind of creepy, especially the outdoors where it's all misty. And blues kind of make me feel kind of sad as well.
Okay, a little sad, maybe a little creepy.
Yeah, sort of, you know, the fact there's no cars at all at the gas station is really creepy, right? And sort of the unkept, you know, unmade bed is sort of like, you know, psychological thriller kind of vibe, or someone who's like, I don't know, dealing with some kind of mental problems.
Okay. You guys have a bit of a different take on this one than I do. What do you think, Joyce?
I'm sorry, my husband came in the room and was asking me a question, so I'm sorry, I missed that part.
That's okay. We're doing describe the vibe. If you can see the stream, we are looking at images that describe a sort of mood and then talking about what does it make you think of? What emotion does it make you feel? What stories does it remind you of?
It makes me think of somebody's restless and they're up and out of bed at 4 a.m. while kind of life around them is still asleep. And so it's kind of like the in between I guess business as usual and the twilight hours. But I can't think of any movie that it reminds me of right now.
Oh, that's okay. We're at this novel boot camp anyway, so it could be a novel, short story, anything.
Yeah.
Thank you for those answers, everybody. I think I'm more with Joyce on this than with Becky and Nacho's first read, just in that I guess I have insomnia, so 4 a.m. doesn't feel as creepy to me as it just feels kind of wistful and lonely, and you're like the only person in the whole world. Like that kind of you get to me, I get this vibe from Charlie Kaufman movies. Or like certain parts like Ishiguro books, or like these very literary stories about people that are lost and looking for some kind of meaning in their lives. How about this one?
Hallmark movie where the protagonist has to go back to the small town, you know, give up their advertising CEO job to you know, have hot chocolate with the local lumberjack.
Yep, childhood sweetheart for sure. What else?
Or what are the animals? That are those dogs or sheep?
I think they're cows. Yeah, they're cows.
Oh, yeah.
And this is some people walking dogs in the top row.
My child writer brain just immediately went adventure. Like there's a thing about, you know, kids go on an adventure and then being able to come back home and have a hot cup of cocoa. It's that safe adventure where you get to go off traveling into like a mysterious woods and do all of that, but there's still home to come back to with, you know, warmth and
Or like one of those really, really cozy, super, super cozy rural British murder mysteries where it's like somebody died in the village, but it's like let's still time to have some hot cocoa.
yes, yeah. Oh, I love the cozy British murder mysteries.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm guilty pleasure.
Joyce, anything?
I'm getting that Hallmark vibe too. big city gal, tries to, or guy tries to let go of all that stress and hides himself in a little remote area, maybe where they used to live. And then they're settling into their quiet time. And then somehow, some way they meet someone and it pulls them back out to where they're connecting with people and in a relationship.
Okay. Sounds like a happy, gentle, cozy kind of vibe. I think also we can look at what we don't see in these pictures. For instance, in the 4 a.m. vibes, there's no people in any of them. Like that's where you get a lot of the sense of loneliness here. In this sort of cozy autumn thing, there's no technology. You see, there's no like smartphones, there's no cars, there's no roads. The most technology you see might be like an old-fashioned tractor out there. That's because I think with a big part of the cozy and cottage core kind of vibe is a return to tradition and to simple rural living. How about this one? It's a weird one.
That definitely gives me vibes of, that sort of cross between fantasy and sci-fi where, like not necessarily just looking at the computer screens, but I'm thinking about it with this mix of technology and magic. So I don't know what the genre is called, but I read it quite a lot where it's like a fantasy world, but they still have like science in it. Like it's not steampunk because this looks more modern
More
technology
more.
of I don't know what the term is for this
I was,
modern.
I was gonna say there's a bit of whimsy here.
Sure.
Yeah.
So like it could be sort of sci-fi or something, but it's more like whimsical and playful.
Yeah, to me, this is like an Alice in Wonderland, kind of surreal, dreamlike vibe. And with that level of friendliness to it. There's nothing scary about it.
Well,
If
that
for me, with the
the
bed
computer-
underwater, it has that Lost Atlantis feel, especially with the columns. And for me, when I see her looking at all those monitors, it's like she's kind of connecting to that world and seeing what happened, and that maybe it's not lost.
Sure, okay. Like echoes of antiquity, kind of in the setting, but as we can see in like, yeah, these Corinthian columns and things like this.
It could also be a take on escapism. So a talk on how a lot of us are using VR, or at least where they think the future's going, to live in worlds that aren't real rather than being in the real world. This is kind of showing whereas most stories I think look on the like how dangerous it is, this is more of the look how beautiful it could be.
Sure, sure. Yeah, there's a definite technological motif between the images for sure. This reminds me of a book like Piranesi by Susanna Clark. Okay, I've got one more. Another kind of odd one. What do you guys think? What are these images? What memories, what sensory details, what stories do they make you think of?
Sci-fi and other worlds.
Other worlds,
um,
great. Okay, go ahead.
yeah, also sort of like um a scale where humans are not, you know, like almost like, you know, meaningless in the scale of the universe or something, where
Yeah. Yeah, look at these little
um,
tiny figures.
you know,
For me, it feels like, we're all in a simulation. And so those are the overseers, the big one kind of holding the light for, we think it's the moon or the stars, but, there's an overseer actually holding it. And then the hand coming down over the, small person walking. It's that, somebody else is kind of controlling that person's movement or what's going on in their path.
Sure. Yeah, gods or aliens or cosmic forces beyond our control, manipulating the world, able to crush us with one flick of the wrist. Can you guys name any stories that have this vibe? Any epic sci-fi fans, or Three Body Problem or Dune or anyone?
It kind of reminds me of Blake Crouch. He has those parallel world. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah.
But there's a
Dark
couple.
Matter and Recursion.
Yes. Yeah.
Great books. Yeah.
The
Definitely.
middle
Okay.
one feels like it could be from one of the newer, darker Star Trek, like,
Oh, sure, like
the
space.
crash down.
Yeah, space opera can definitely have this epic sense of scale and insignificance of humanity.
I
Or
was also, sorry,
oh no, go ahead.
I was also going to say it feels very mythology based. Like, yeah, you're talking about these dark figures that could crush us, but notice that they're giving out lights. The one that's reaching, I feel like maybe he's putting the sun there. And you've got those kind of mythologies of these larger than life creatures that like control our way of life, keeps us alive.
Sure.
And sort of like a Jeff Vandermeer, vibe or something, like just things that are just unexplainable or,
Oh yeah. Very much, yeah. And anytime you hear this word cosmic, then it's usually referring to these grand scale events, kind of incomprehensible forces beyond our control, and humanity's insignificance in the wake of them. All right, so this is mood. We're talking about these sort of indefinable vibes. And you can create this in a lot of different ways. Thinking of like how many brushstrokes does an artist take to create a picture? You can do a bird as just a little squiggly M, or you can spend 5 paragraphs talking about the plumage and the feathers and the length of the beak and the color of the beak, which is a parallel to the flag of the country where you find that bird. And that bird also has a family full of chicks, each one kind of standing in for one of the politicians running your country. Like, you could write a whole book that was just a description of a bird. Just kind of taking every single element and breaking it down into such granular detail and drawing connections and imagery and simile. And like, there are some literary novels that are just kind of like this. Or a bird can just be a squiggle. You can just say, the sky was a flutter with birds, right? So we can think of different ways to write these things. So I would always be trying out like different versions as an exercise. Like, how many sentences do you need to actually express an image or idea? 1 sentence, 2 or 3, and exploring that range from this very minimalist all the way to purple prose and finding that best balance between them. We're not going to do that exercise today, but that is a nice one to try. Let's get into the difference between mood and tone, though. What is tone exactly, and how is it different than mood?
I mean, I think like they work together, but it's like, mood is something we're looking at like in a specific, moment. Like the mood here is sort of, like it's how we're setting the scene or, where we are in the moment. And I feel like the tone is kind of more uh like how you think of the overall story.
Sure. Yeah, I think the tone comes a lot through the author's voice, attitude, and take. Go ahead.
It can be, yeah, it can fluctuate. You can have stories where it's like weird, but it usually feels weird if the tone is like very different in certain parts of the story, right?
Sure. Yeah. So the
Okay.
attitude of the author. Go ahead.
Carry on.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, like, the tone to me is kind of in the author's world, where the mood is me as a reader, what it's doing to my mood.
That's a good way
That
to
makes sense.
break it down, I think. Yeah. The mood is more what you take from it, whereas the tone is more the author's approach to that material.
Because
Go ahead.
I struggle with the difference between mood and tone, but I think the way that Nacho described it made me think about it. And yeah, I think cozy is a tone, cozy murder mystery. That's the tone. You can have some very serious moments within that, but cozy is the overall tone. Or like where I'm writing horror, it's got comedy in it because it's for kids. So I'd say overall the tone is creepy but also funny.
Sure.
Whereas when you actually look at the book, it goes from, I mean, there are some really tragic moments, you know, the mood fluctuates a lot more than the tone does. So
Yeah.
I guess to me, that's
Cozy's kind of a weird one too, because cozy is both. I feel like cozy is a mood. Like people can look at an image and be like, that's cozy. And you can also tell a story to someone and they can be like, that's cozy. Because cozy has kind of evolved. It's become a more versatile term over the years as it's become like its own genre almost, or its own sort of like it's like a pervading tone that has almost evolved into a genre in some ways. But in any case, yeah, I think you're spot on. And tone, I think you could even imagine stories of the same mood, but with authors of very different tone writing that story. Even imagining one that is like we could just take the mood of like creepy autumn, right? We mentioned like Halloween type stories about adventures in the woods and things like that. You could have one author that has a very sort of dark, dour, depressing take on that, where all the characters die at the end and there no lesson is learned, and by the end we're just sort of left to reckon with the tragedy of what has happened. And then you may have another take on that that sort of plays it all as a big, fun, exciting adventure that's always sort of making light of things. The narrative voice itself might be kind of making jokes directly to the reader. So the tone I think is coming much more through in the author's like attitude and narrative voice filters to the material itself. Some examples we might just describe like sardonic, earnest, playful, grim, irreverent is a common tone descriptor. Kind of means they will make fun of anything. Is what irreverent means is like always looking for the joke and nothing's off the table. Some other examples might be like a wistful sort of tone we mentioned for like the stories, especially in that 4 a.m. mood. To me, have that this sense that the author is ruminating on what could have been, or they have characters that are locked in these cycles where they can never change even though they want to, and they're just left sort of wandering in the night, so to speak. This ultimately is going to be communicated through narration, dialogue, and just perspective, and some combination of those three things. Like, let's compare, for instance, 1950s classic Robin Hood and like sword and sorcery type movies like this, or this is like the Errol Flynn era adventure, compared with the modern day Rome, Game of Thrones, Last Kingdom style prestige HBO and BBC historical dramas. What's the difference?
What's the difference between what exactly?
1950s Errol Flynn era adventure and historical stories compared to grimdark Rome era sort of Game of Thrones prestige TV.
the swashbuckling era just feels more fun or fantasy, as in like it's like completely like it's not real. Kind of more I quite enjoy them. You know, the hero is very heroic and all of this, whereas modern day, it's even when it's fantasy, it's trying to have more realism. I mean, obviously you've got there like The Crown and things like that, but even more, I think where they're trying to do fantasy like Game of Thrones, that it's kind of trying to be a lot more realistic with like death and politics and things like that.
Sure. Harsher consequences in the gritty tone. You have morally gray and morally ambiguous characters. There isn't going to be as clear cut of a hero versus a villain. The Errol Flynn era was much more sort of theatrical and stylized as opposed to the more grounded and down to earth. Grounded and stylized are usually seen as opposite ends of the spectrum. Anything else you guys notice here?
I mean, I know Errol Flynn was in the age of Technicolor, so there's a film historic vibe to it because we had Technicolor, and Technicolor was the way in which they created the color was very painted, and so you tended to get these outfits that are a lot more colorful and not as realistic. So it's due to the limitations of the film itself, but they were a lot more, like you say, theatrical. They were a lot more bright and punchier and powerful, and even the setting is kind of normally very bright, well lit up, whereas now it's sort of, and I think it's partly technology has allowed it to be, where on our TVs, we can have a lot more dynamic range of color, but it's a lot more saturated, dark tones,
Sure.
kind of underrated. I will say we still do get the big fanciful, colourful, it's just not everything. Like, look at Bridgerton. You know, one of the big things about Bridgerton is how unrealistic, over
Yeah.
the top those dresses are.
Look how nice everyone's teeth are, and look how clean everything
Yeah.
is. It's like a huge difference.
Yeah.
Even just this picture, look how clean it is. That's you can even just take a look at one image from a grittier medieval show, and you'll see peasants with filthy teeth and sweats and mud-stained clothes and things like this that are just not really part of that same fantasy. So very different tones to the same material. Let me just, I lost it. Move this down. I'll go to the next slide. Okay. Here's a quote from Joe Abercrombie talking about grittiness and what it means and what it's really for and how he approaches it. This is from a much longer article he wrote in 2015 on his website. Okay, lots of people who praise gritty writing talk about its realism. Lots of people who criticize it assert there's nothing realistic about splatter and crushing cynicism all the time, right? His view is that you're both right. Realism is an interesting concept in fantasy. If we were aiming at the uncompromisingly real, we probably wouldn't be writing in made-up worlds with forces that don't actually exist. So things are often exaggerated for effect and twisted and larger than life. But even within that, we can still aim at something that approximates real life in all kinds of different ways, where the people and their behavior and the outcomes of the actions are believable. So that's kind of what he's going for in his approach to gritty writing. It might be a world where impossible, crazy things happen, but to almost compensate for it and ground it even deeper in reality and make it feel, more viable, more lived in, more immersive. He deliberately tries to make the human behavior a little more unpredictable and realistic and throw what he describes as more curveballs. Traditional fantasy is often, or what does he say here? Real life is surprising and unpredictable. Traditional fantasy is often the reverse. You know how to spot a certain type of character. When you spot him or her, you've got a pretty good notion where their story is going to go. But grit and the sort of purpose of the gritty tone as he sees it is to shake up that relationship with the reader and to throw curveballs so they just will never really know what's going to happen next. So we can see it's more than some people complain about this the grimdark approach as well. It's just sex and gore, and they all end with just a big bloodbath where everyone dies and no one completes their arc. And then what was the point of any of this? But what he's really trying to do is create a world that feels like anything could happen in the way that anything could happen in real life. Not like anything at all is possible, but people are unpredictable and fickle and make mistakes and forget things and lose their temper and like do all these just very human things. So he tries to make the humans behave in a more human way to compensate for these outlandish worlds, I guess. Any questions or thoughts on that idea of grittiness and what grittiness means? We talked about this a bit yesterday as well in post-apocalyptic dystopian class. Okay, I'll keep going. So feel free, does anybody want to volunteer to describe the tone they want to convey in their current projects?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm using your thing stopped me. Oh, well, I'll sort that out in a second. So I want creepy. I want my tone to be still a bit fun. So, I've got a character that's there for comic relief. You know, he's sarcastic. He's kind of breaks the tension when the tension gets too high, because I'm trying to be there we go, I can see it again. Because I'm trying to be like gross and creepy, but not too scary. I don't want to traumatize kids. I want them to enjoy reading and like kind of go, yeah, that's gross, but not actually scare them. So it's classed as horror, but I'd say by adult standards, it's more of a cozy horror, more of a ghost story type vibes, that kind of creepy rather than anything too gory. There's no like gory deaths. There is, but they're ghosts and they've been dead for a while, and it's seeing the aftermath of their death rather than it being like us actually seeing it happen. So it's more creepy and gross because you're seeing like the ghost's blood dripping, but it's ghost blood. It's not like you're actually seeing a person getting mangled. Do you know what I mean? It's
Sure.
seeing this ghostly after effect. So you can almost, like if it was a film, I'd imagine it almost being almost cartoony, you know, to help alleviate, kind of like the ghosts in Harry Potter. You know, you got nearly headless Nick, but he's not as gory as he would actually be as a nearly headless person. Like, do you know what I mean?
Right, for sure.
Um, so yeah, so I'm sort of going for this definitely creepy. There's definitely some creepy moments, definitely some sad moments, but overall, I want it to be a fun adventure with these creepy elements.
Awesome. Sounds like you have a good understanding of the nuance of the tone. Thank you for that.
I hope so.
Anyone else want to speak to the tone of their book projects? Maybe comparing it to something else.
I would kind of compare mine to like the show The Medium, where she's a professional, balancing psychic abilities with kind of her prior detective roles. Does that kind of fall under tone?
Yeah. So would you say it feels a little more like a procedural?
Yeah, but still with like, kind of otherworldly feel to it, but still kind of grounded in reality, even though there's a very strong psychic element to it. That
Makes
makes
sense.
sense.
Yeah, procedural tone also has a lot of focus on like the rules that they use, or the systems, the tools that they use, like the actual work of solving the mystery or crime.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm kind of still figuring out the tone, I guess, in a way. Like, I think what I'm sort of going for is like a more uh like a nuance or like more natural kind of naturalistic tone, but with unexplainable, horror stuff going on at the same time. Um, and I think a lot of that when let's say characters feel more realistic, that's particularly like the characters who are sort of like uh you know the antagonist, so like the my protagonist's dad, who's like he's like the director of the secret police, right? And it could be very easy to fall into just more sort of caricature, this, angry bad guy, and so that's something that's kind of hard to like. I'm sure it will take like a few drafts to really get it right, I guess.
Yeah, that's a tough thing, especially because a lot of the time when I'll see someone working on a story like this where there's this character that we're supposed to have these mixed feelings on. Maybe they're really bad, but the writer feels like, well, but I gotta put in at least one moment so the audience kind of feels like a little compassion for them. But then when you read it, you're like, it doesn't feel like the author actually has any compassion for them. They just put in a moment where they feel
Hmm.
like that was something that they thought that the reader would relate to or like. But like that character never does
Hmm.
anything that the author would actually consider to be genuinely admirable in the entire book. So I think that
Hmm.
that is often the difference. You have to find something that you genuinely do admire or think is a good quality in
Hmm.
that character and showcase that in the most honest possible way. It's tough. Yeah, it's tough to balance that tonal approach.
I, and I guess it could really, it seems like it has a big impact, like, just the, if there's a character that feels more over the top, it just screws up the tone for the whole book,
Yeah, for sure.
especially if it's like the antagonist. Yeah. Mhm.
Definitely. Okay, thank you for sharing, everyone who shared. Any questions on mood or tone before we move on to genre? Okay, let's go right into genre. So genres are bundles of expectations. I have just written up some weird stuff. What genres could these be? Okay, story about a pawn shop owner in Brooklyn reconnecting with a lost love. What could that be?
Cozy romance.
Could be cozy romance. Anything
If
else?
it's a little magical items in the pawn shop, maybe some kind of little, urban fantasy.
Okay.
Horror. His
Okay.
lost love.
Go ahead.
His lost love is dead. And the
Okay.
pawn shop owner, he's managed to get hold of a device that can bring people back from the dead, but there's always a cost from bringing people back
Okay.
from the dead.
Hang on, this sounds like something you're working on a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Let's let's maybe instead of saying what we would do with it, let's think of what would this probably be if we saw it in a store. We just like read the back of the book. We're just trying to assess
Mhm.
what this would most likely be.
I still think that you could, like, the fact that it's going reconnecting with a lost love, but it's a pawn shop. Like, I still think it could be a cozy horror, like a one
Sure.
of those. That's, you know what I mean. It's not like, but yeah, it's kind of like um or you know, a romance, but it being like a romance with supernatural twist.
It could
Just
be, I
because
guess,
of the
just
pawn.
if we saw this blurb in a store, we would expect them to give us a little clue of that probably if there was something else going on, because that would probably be part of the hook of the story. We could still maybe
It
be
was
surprised. Right.
it was the pawn shop for me that made me think, like Nacho said, it's connected to some, like, it's that's what made me go horror, because why pawn shop? Why not just any shop?
Right, right, okay. So yeah, maybe I'll change the wording of this a little bit just to clarify. What genres would these probably be? Right, not like anything it could be at all. Okay. So how about this one? Alien species battle it out with spaceships and future tech.
Like, end of the world.
It's
So
military sci-fi, maybe.
Probably military sci-fi, yeah. Or apocalyptic, maybe you mentioned end of the world. Could be.
yeah, like it made me think of Independence Day, the second, the remake, where they used the technology from the older one to, yeah.
For sure. The other thing is too the fact that it says alien species are battling it out with each other makes it sort of also sound like xenofiction, which is a type of story where there's no humans, or the main characters at least are either aliens or animals or bugs or something else, right? Okay, how about this one? A serial killer attempts to repent for his many crimes and lead a better life.
Okay, this one is throwing me because if it were just a killer, okay, I could definitely see like, sort of contemporary, Shawshank Redemption type of vibe, or like like they're like, I don't know, like a novel about somebody trying to, go through redemption and recovery. But a serial killer is like, no, you're not going to get a redemption for that, right?
Hard to come back from that.
Yeah, so that's a whole different story.
But Dexter's
Well, no,
killing
but Dexter is not trying to repent. He's just enabling his addiction to killing people by killing bad guys.
I agree, but in the beginning, like, forget the later series, in the earlier series, he was someone that we were rooting for. You know, we wanted him to get away with it because
I rooted for him the whole show, but I think it just when you say attempt to repent and lead a better life, it sounds like he doesn't want to kill anymore, right?
Yeah.
Which the patient is kind of like,
who knows? You can interpret these any way you want. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there's a phenomenal. Oh, sorry. Good.
I could see this being a really powerful story about using the serial killer to be a metaphor for vices that people want to overcome and just taking it to its extreme.
Sure.
I could see this being really uplifting.
Well, there's a really phenomenal series, a half-hour show with Steve Carell and Domhnall Gleeson, and it's like a serial killer. Basically, he kidnaps his psychologist or his therapist because that's the only way he could totally be honest and his goal is to stop killing people. And it's just working through his addiction to killing people, but he can't let the guy go because then he'll call the cops, So it's like, is he going to kill the psychologist? Is he going to stop killing other people? And he's really trying, like, he's definitely like, it's like an addiction for him. And it's very dark. I mean, this is, but it's incredible, writing. And I mean, there could be sort of that kind of tone, I guess I could sort of see.
Sure. Yeah. Could be psychological thriller. Might kind of just be on the literary contemporary side. If it focuses it depends if it focuses more on the character's inner or exterior life, I think.
Yeah, I think it could be a really interesting narrator voice if it's like first person.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Last one. Two people fall in love, and after many trials, they live happily ever after.
Absolute romance.
How about a legal romance with two lawyers?
Okay. After
Of
many
all their
trials.
trials.
Well done. Well, that would certainly be the title. Would certainly feature. It would be called like Trials and Tribulations or something, wouldn't it? That's pretty much all this could be. I mean, this maybe it's a fairy tale or something like that. How about some weirder ones? A hilarious romance set in the Regency era. I guess that's not that weird.
Mhm.
I was gonna say, that's so weird. That's,
There's
we
probably
have
a
that
few
in
of those.
the
Okay. So I guess we would just call it Regency romance, but with a funny tone. But not a separate
Mhm.
genre.
It's historical rom-com.
There you go. How about a series of anecdotes about bugs, annotated by a set of footnotes that seem to tell the story of the researcher descending into madness?
Nick Cutter or
Danielowski.
yeah, exactly. Kind of vibe.
Yeah, what do we call that genre?
Mock real. Like if there was a documentary, it'd be a mockumentary where it's set up to be like a real thing.
Literary horror, maybe.
Yeah, like experimental epistolary literary horror, perhaps. It is a
Yeah, I
type
don't know
of
what the
epistolary, I think.
Or it could be magical realism or like sort of like Kafka or Borges.
Oh, sure. All right, how about a murder in a Martian colony, but the only one to solve it is a talking cat named Uncle Rex?
I mean, that makes sense if we're living in a world where we can colonize Mars. Surely we've created technology to help us communicate with our animals, you know?
Okay, so what's the genre?
New Douglas
So-
Adams novel.
Sci-fi? Okay,
Yeah.
any other? Oh, Douglas Adams.
It's Adams, 100%.
Okay, sci-fi.
Absurdist.
Yeah, absurdist. That's his own sort of world where the author's kind of just making weird choices, just partially for the sake of it, and partially because it is a world that weird stuff where weird
Mhm.
stuff happens all the time.
I like the specificity of this one.
Yeah.
So these are all expectations, right? These are genres are
Mhm.
expectations, and by looking at what like with the end product, sometimes we can decide which basket of expectations do we put it into. It's going to include a combination of tropes and rules and beats and emotional moments, and it's going to tell us which books we'll probably enjoy. Most people decide what they want to read based on the author and based on the genre and the cover. Those are like the three main things. When it comes to movies, they decide based on the genre, the trailer, and the actor and the lead actors that are in it, and sometimes the director. Occasionally, never the screenwriter though. Nobody cares about screenwriters. So we are looking for a specific type of experience with each genre, and only by being a big fan of that genre can you fully understand the nuances of what that experience entails and the different tones and styles that exist within it. So you just have to breed a lot of your own thing that you're working on. Got to play by the rules. Some genres have stricter rules than others. There's not really a definitive checklist of most of them or of what works in any genre. This isn't necessarily meaning that if you check every box, it will be good. It's just like some combination of those tropes, expectations, and indefinable vibes that the story exudes sums up to create that genre and what the readers want out of it. We also have different market approaches, which can affect the tone and mood of any individual book as well, from the literary end down to commercial, which is sort of intended to be as popular as possible, and upmarket, which kind of bridges the gap between them with more sophisticated prose, but perhaps more commercial style plots. Every genre has its own spectrum of tone, mood, and market approach. You can like target audiences. You can see some pretty clear differences in the covers on some of these. A lot of the time, the more commercial books will focus with it will put a person on the cover, or even a close up on a character's face, or there's this whole genre of like girl with sword books, for instance, or girl with horse, or romance genres that are kind of just like a cowboy or a pirate with his shirt ripped open, and he's like on a balcony as the waves splash up behind him, or something like this. You can tell the tonal approach based on just the imagery that is used to give you clues to inform the reader which book they might like to get. These are all marketing tools. as well as they are approaches to the storytelling. Okay. With expectations comes also the idea that the reader wants to be continually surprised, despite the fact that we know exactly the kind of thing we want to get. And that's one of those like inherent frictions in storytelling, is that the reader knows the sort of thing they want, but if you give them the exact thing they want,